Okay. Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be trying to start a little series on how to mod Tiny Combat Arena, mostly in reference to aircraft. Here are a couple of things that I have work in progress, been working on, and so I'm going to try to go through a pretty, not exactly a step-by-step tutorial, but more of just show what I do and hope that that helps you guys do what you need to do. And so for the first part of this tutorial, this is just going to be the Blender side of making a model for Tiny Combat Arena. If you already have a model, this isn't necessarily required. However, I'm going to be going over some techniques I use to try to get the right looking style for the aircraft. As this was a model of my F-102, today I'm going to be making the F-106. I already got a diagram here, so we can start off with that. First thing you really want to do when doing most things in Blender is get the scale right. So let's get a cube in here. Length is 21. Wow, this is a big plane. Okay, 21 meters. 21 meters dot 55. Wingspan is 1167. And that's about all we need right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rotate this like this. That doesn't seem right. Hold on. Yeah, no. Something's not right about that. So 21.55 meters long and with a wingspan of 1167. Oh, don't know why I did that. Okay, 1167. There we go. That's a lot more like it. And if we line up the wing tips and then get the pitot tube in there, that fits. Look at that. That's all we really need to do right now for the scaling of stuff. Now I'm going to set up the blueprints. Nope. Yep, there we go. And this isn't going to try to be like a in-depth Blender tutorial. I'm more just going to make a model and go over some techniques I use. There are plenty of other better Blender tutorials than like I could ever make going over how to actually use Blender. So get the diagrams all lined up. One reference I like to use is like the top of the canopy, because you can sort of match these lines up where they need to go. In the front, this one's going to be a little bit more of a pain. We'll see. Doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to be good enough. There we go. Look at that. We got all our diagrams, now we can space these out to where we need them to be. And then we can spawn in our first object, which I usually start off with a cylinder with 8 vertices. If you look at the aircraft in Tiny Combat Arena, I just shut down Tiny Combat Arena, but I know there's an F4 in here. You can see that most of them have 8-sided noses. I think the F5 doesn't, but that's because it has a very small nose already. However, usually starting off with 8-sided faces works pretty well. And that's another thing, probably the biggest tip I can use to make stuff that looks like it fits in the Tiny Combat Arena style is to use a reference. So just look in the in-game database and look at and see what the other aircraft do with their poly counts. So like if you look, actually that the splitter plate there is an actual part, it's not just a flat plane, but there are a couple bits that they use like tips and tricks of just having like double-sided faces, which I'll talk about later in depth when we get to it. So cylinder, now we can start building out the fuselage. Try to use like as the least amount of loop cuts as you can, because you can always come back later and add more if you need more detail, but sometimes it's hard to go and take it away if you've already added it, in my opinion. I think there are some people who probably disagree with that statement, but that's how I usually do my stuff. So you see this line is about where that canopy is, so we can sort of move these over about to where they need to be. We're about to hit the canopy too, so I'm about to probably roughly sketch this out now. Let's do that actually, hold on. For these angular canopies, you can actually do something pretty easy here. And in my opinion, this is how I do most of my canopies anyway, is I'll start off by sketching out the windows themselves. And with the F106 here, because it's just a triangle and like a cube, this is very easy. We can sketch out the window faces and then find a way to attach to the body in a minute. So let's fill these in. Come on. Now for the cockpit, I'm going to extrude this little part of the cylinder upward. Because as you see, there's like a hump here where the canopy connects to the fuselage. So we're going to need some extra detail around that area. We can continue to extrude, and then we hit the intakes. We'll worry about the intakes in a minute. I want to get this nose taken care of. So we can automatically connect that up there. A couple other things I want to do real quick though. I'm just going to define some loop cuts here to help actually mold out the canopy here. And we can inset these faces to give them a window frame. And that does add a bit of triangles. Actually, we can check the count right now. What are we at? We're at 118. So, not great, not terrible. How am I gonna do that? I think this should be a little bigger, and that'll help us here. That's a lot better. As you can see, this bit extends a little downward here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually hide all this. Not you or you. The canopy, we can get rid of that for now, and then we can just sort of cut out the rest of this. Go from there to there to there. Alright, I can do that. Actually, hold on. just to help to keep all our cuts nice and clean. I'm doing this to get everything to play nice with each other. Turning that off for now because it sort of accentuates the weirdness in some of the triangles that I'll try to fix later. Now this is going to be a little tricky. How does this get joined together in the real F100? So, or F106. So it's very smooth actually. That there shouldn't be this step at all. If we do that, does that work? And I think that does. We can delete this back bit here. And we have the canopy section done. It's only 156 triangles. That's not great, but we'll worry about it later. So these intakes, let's look at these intakes real quick. That's the F102. So yeah, they really stick out until about past the tail, where then they really join with the fuselage and become the engine. So one thing I can really... Actually, no, I won't do that. What can I do? So... That's something I could fix. Fuselage isn't wide enough in some of these areas, so I'm going to fix that real quick. Now, so they start about... We go back to... That's not a bad photo, actually. So it starts about here, ends about there. We have that on our diagram here. What we can try to do is drag these ones down, because again, we want to try to be conservative with our loop cuts and all that. We can pull these two down there. These two we can extrude and make our intake. Now will that work? We're about to find out. Oh, that's terrible. It's angled like... angled like that, but actually that might work. Yeah, that sort of worked. That's good enough. Now, there's a splitter plate there. So we're gonna want to have these come off away from the fuselage, like that. So I'm thinking, where does this start? Where does this split start? Right about there, which is... What the heck? Let's make the split start all the way back here, just to, again, cut down on the vertices. Now we can fill this back rectangle in, fill this front rectangle in so nobody sees like void behind it. And then we can add a little splitter plate up here that I think, yeah, this connects straight up to the intake here. See, that doesn't look right though. There we go. That's not too bad. It's not perfect, but... And now, usually the intakes in Tiny Combat Arena, if you look at like the F4 here, they don't go in anywhere. They're just filled in faces at the front. And so again, I did that with like the F102 and the F100. Not so much with that in the F86, but... Point is here, I think I'm going to extrude them in just a little bit, because they have that sort of concave shape. At least what I'll do is I'll try to like... These ones can stay there, but these can go back. And then we can merge these top ones by distance. And it should give it this cool effect. I think that's pretty neat. I think that's what I'm looking for. Oh, shoot. Yeah, once again, we want to be conservative with our triangles here, so I'm just gonna cut a new one instead of adding an entire loop cut. That out of the way, we can start extruding the rest of the fuselage. Doesn't really look like anything changes on this portion. We can look at the one in real life and it's hard to tell with the wing. I don't know, it looks mostly constant. But when we get up here, however, things start to change. So we can delete these inside vertices now that we don't need them anymore. And I ought to mirror this now, because we did a bunch of work on it. Hold on, I can do that in a minute. So point is, this intake section is getting bigger. As you can see, it's sloping up, and this top rail bit is getting smaller. Now the intake goes just about down there too. It's being incorporated with some of the okay, yeah, I'm mirroring this. This is looking a little too off now. I don't know if it's actually getting thinner there or if that's the wing covering where it gets wider, but it does transition, this top fin bit does transition into like the tail sort of right around here, and then the exhaust. So now that we have actually all our vertices, what I can do is I can get the end of this done, because this is just a circle. come on. It really doesn't like to work. That's not a good circle. Well, I'll mirror it. I'll mirror it in a minute. And then that should fix some of the problems. I need to get a photo of the bottom side, like this, but for the 106. Perfect. It's basically all smooth on the bottom. The wing covers up the intake joint, so no, that doesn't really dip below the wing portion. And that just smoothly transitions into the engine, okay. So then how does it do that without looking terrible? Okay. This is the tricky part about some of these airplanes, is trying to figure out how parts do their thing. It should flow pretty smoothly from the bottom, and it kind of does. Hold on. I'm going to apply that mirror modifier again, just to get it actually circled, and not whatever's going on right there now. Does the intake really... I mean, it sort of does, though. It doesn't... I don't think it does it that drastically. I feel like this bottom piece more just flattens out a little. It goes from like being concave in to like concave out. I'm pretty happy with that. That's not perfect, but it'll do for now. Now we can move on to the wings. Wings for Tiny Combat Arena are actually kind of fun because they are stupid simple. Most of the aircraft either have wings that are like only 3 vertices or 4. I believe the Harrier has 4. If we look at the F5 or F4, I believe it only has, yeah, it only has 3, I think. And I usually only use 3 on most of my planes. Like if we look back here, there's 3 on the 102, 3 on the F86, 3 on the F100. The only one that has 4 is the or the Yak 23, because that has a little bit of a fatter wing. But usually here, again, you can just make a plane that goes across where your wing needs to be. And then just create a loop cut on where the leading edge should be, about there. Now you can pull that up however much you want to get your wing shape. Obviously I'm going to push it down at the wing tip. But now, just fill in the bottom, and then you have your Tiny Combat Arena wing. Hooray. It's actually kind of really simple, and it looks pretty convincing from a distance. It doesn't work perfectly, obviously. Especially like only 3 vertices, it's hard to get like great definition with that much. However, I think it works pretty good. Just gonna push that in a little more and scalp out. saying the wing should end about there, so... That's not going to be perfectly matching with the diagram here, but it shouldn't really matter. It's close enough, and I want that joint to be a little more pretty. We're at 315 for triangle count right now. That's not too bad. I think the fuselage is a little too high poly, but we can come back and change it later. Now for the tail, because we don't have elevators of any kind. The tail is like sort of the same story, just slightly different. Usually what I'll do is I'll get a plane again, create a loop cut in the middle, pull that out, add the mirror modifier, and then apply the clipping so you don't pull apart the wrong bits. And then now you have your tail. Again, drag this forward a little to make it more of a aerofoil shape. The tail here is actually pretty flat, so we might not even need to do a whole lot here. We'll see. Look at that. We can just fill in the top now. The tail is done. Alright. Now let's move on to this little back part of the tail. Where's a good photo of that? There we go. Alright. So it appears to be mostly sharp edges on this side. So this actually won't be too bad. Just gonna grab a cube and line it up with the lines. So it ends about where it says in this diagram, actually, like halfway through the tail here. So what we can do is we can go to there, scale this down so it sort of blends into the wing like that, or the tail fin. Scale this down, scale that part down, delete all those faces. If we look here, this bottom and top bit are rounded. However, I may only round this top part because, again, I want to keep stuff down to a minimum.
How many cinnamon rolls do you guys want?
So
I'll take like 2, I guess.
2 or 3?
2.
Ethan, you want 2 or 3 cinnamon rolls?
I'll take 2. That should be pretty good for that tail part, I think. Now we can move on to the engine. The engine on this one's a little weird, as you can see. It goes to like a thing there, and usually if you look at basically all of the engines in the Tiny Combat Arena game, they're either like a hexagon like this, or they're like they're an octagon like my F8. And they're not this many. And again, we started out with an octagon, but we got that many by extruding for the cockpit and extruding for the intakes. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a circle with 8 for now, because the actual engine part of the F102 or F106 is a little different, because it has this bit that just sort of sticks out. Okay, so with the octagon, we can then begin to extrude the engines. Which are literally sort of just like that. One, two, three, four, five, yeah. I don't know if that's going to be doable. We'll see. We can try at least. Let's see, that's 4. That actually might work, because that's sort of what the tail fin actually does in the F-102. Okay, honestly, let's keep that triangle in there. Then we have our octagon. One, two, three, four. Okay. This isn't wanting to make a perfect octagon, so I'm just gonna create a new one. Bridge edge loops, and that didn't work at all. Why not? Oh yeah, because it's like this. That's far more beautiful. Except why does it do that? Okay. Thanks a lot, Blender. Is that really a separate object? Yeah, it is. Right now, anyway. This is getting pretty close to being done, actually. No, it's not. But they're... Actually, hold on. It might be. We're about to find out. Time to really add a loop cut here and make the length of this chunk a lot bigger. How many triangles are we at? 400? That's not too bad. I can do 400. Alright, trying to think of other stuff we can do. Let's look at the F-102 and see what details we have missing. Pitot tube. Or, I think that's the pitot tube. We can definitely do that. To be perfectly honest, it's probably better not to do this out of an octagon. Because again, you want to save triangles where you can. Oh, what the heck, we're doing it like this now. I wasn't gonna bother, but that actually worked kind of well, so. Pitot tube. We can even make it all striped like I did for the F-102. And... oh yes, that's important. These wing fillet things, there's a term for them. I just forgot what they're called. Fences, I think, maybe? There isn't a good photo. Maybe they don't have them. Maybe they only have them on the bottom. Or no, maybe that's only the F102. Nope, they're right there. So we can get that done. And this is what I'm talking about with the double-sided faces. I'll actually get to that now. Where essentially, you make an object out of one face. Crazy, I know. Dang, I was hoping to be able to see that in the blueprint, but you really can't. It's right about where that notch is, though. Back to about here, and forward to about here. And it's literally just like that. Let's say you want to have this 2D plane represent whatever, that thing. So a little, oh hey, there it is. Look at that. Or is that a pylon? No, that's probably the pylon. So look at that. However, with backface culling enabled, hold on, let me fix this actually. It screws up all the detail on it. Like you can't see it from one side, but you can see it from the other. Because backface culling is like by default in Unity and in Tiny Combat Arena. What you need to do is you need to just duplicate it and then flip the normals with Shift N. And now you can see it on both sides. And Tiny Combat Arena does this for a bunch of things. Like a bunch of things. Like, let me look at landing gear. Landing gear is a great example. Like, see, these faces are infinitely thin. Because, well, not infinitely thin, but you get the point. They're thin, but they are visible from both sides because they have one side that's gray and one side that's white. Same with the HUD elements and the canopy frame. Because they're still two-dimensional. They don't really have like a third dimension, if you get what I'm saying. They're just a flat face that has both sides. Let's try to get this little bump that's on the front of the nose, whatever that is. It just looks like a bump, never mind. A lot of the rest of these grills and other bits and pieces can actually be done with decals, and I'll actually go over that in a minute. But right now I'm looking for pure modeling work. You can probably get this this hook thing down here. This is a little bigger than that one wing. I think that's like an aileron push rod actually, but point is I'm going to use a cube for this. Something like that I think will work actually very well. Can't see anything from back there, but this is pretty thin. Maybe that big. And then you have the hook. Fuel tank's blocking my view. And it keeps going till about just forward of the push rod, in between the push rod and the nook there. I don't know if that's a great idea. Actually, hold on. I got a better idea. Deleting those, and then we're going to merge these faces at the top here. faces, vertices, to make it essentially a little ridge. Except for right, you know, that might work alright. Still at 473 triangles. That's not too bad. Now, you know what? We can tackle these little tubes in the front of the tail here. I believe the F4 has something similar. Nope. Well, it does in real life. I believe it has some bits over there, but like it has this little dot on the tail. So let's do it. Actually, let's do those double-sided faces thing again, because these things on the tail are not going to be very visible at all, and so we don't need a lot to get away with it. Look at that. Perfect. Now we can start actually doing some of the coloring and texturing. I'll probably do some more modeling, however... Hold on, will this work actually? It will. It still has the F4 palette loaded up. Very nice. There we go. So the F106 is this like... Is it called like air defense gray or something, maybe? Point is, it's definitely an interesting color to choose, because it's not bare metal. So I'm just gonna stick for this sort of whitish color for now. So if we look here, it actually curves up in this sort of complex manner to the nose. I'll figure out how to do that in a minute. Let's pick a one to model off of. Most of these are Air National Guard, I think. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're Air Force. Could do that. We could do the cornfield bomber. Come on, bro. Oh well. U.S. Air Force Museum. Because I think this is the cornfield bomber, if I'm not mistaken. The one that crashed in that field, but it doesn't... I can't really see any of the details on that, so we're just going to go with a normal F-106. Like this guy. He doesn't have very many tail markings. He's pretty basic. Actually, Let's go with this one. Just sort of as a reference. This tail is mostly, this bottom part appears to be a gray of some kind, though. I don't know why. This is obviously some kind of exhaust, so it's going to be, nah, let's just make it gray for now. Yeah, I probably should go over this. Basically, in Tiny Combat Arena, all the aircraft, they don't really use textures per se, and yes, technically this is a texture, but it's more a palette is, I guess, the more accurate term, because you don't really UV unwrap anything and try to like draw your own camouflage on it. Everything is built into the mesh, if that makes any sense. You'll probably see what I'm talking about in a minute, but point is, you have this palette, you can select faces and then drag them to the different colors. So for decals, you don't really get an image of a decal and paste it on there. You can do that, but the ones in game, they have literal decal meshes. Which, you know what? While we're here, F106 has them there, and then it has USF on the other wing. Alright, so we can actually go to my F86. Steal its roundel that I have. I've already made for it. Paste that here. That's the right wing. Oh, and I forgot this has all the markings on it. Never mind. So if you look at this, this is literally like a mesh with all the colors applied to it. So we actually get back to coloring and everything proper. So if we look at this one, it's got this red band along the tail. That is nice, though. This actually has all the stenciling and details built in. I don't see this red tail bit, though. Any other... Oh, see, this guy doesn't have it. This guy does, though. This guy doesn't. Or does he? Nope. Okay. We're gonna ignore it for now. I really don't want to have it all be just one color. However, it sort of is just all one color. Now here we have this like edge rim for the splitter plate being this gray color. So we can sort of do that that cool silver effect where you have like the bottom black and the top like a white, and it gives it a shaded effect. And I'm gonna have to mirror this again probably. Make the intake black like it should be. And oh yeah, I forgot those aren't real faces, so this can stay this dark brown, and then this can add a loop cut right around here and turn this into this. It's that gray. Yeah, we're mirroring it now. Alright. Look at that. This isn't the right... Well... It's not terribly the wrong color either. That bluish gray is sort of what it's supposed to be, but I'll probably change it later with its own custom palette. We'll stick it on the F4s for now though. Next thing is going to be decals. This is, in my opinion, one of the most fun parts of actually modeling the planes, because you can just do a bunch of neat stuff. So some obvious ones for the nose is we have this armament panel here, and we have the ejection seat triangle there. So we can actually make this really easy. So I'm going to keep that default cube there for later. You know what, I could be doing this all in UV editing, so I'm actually modifying the colors while we're at it. Start off outlined in red, scale it in, it goes to white. Kind of crazy, but same with this thing. Look at that. So, nope, it's the opposite, my bad. So white with a red in the middle. And yeah, hold on. Actually, I'm going to do something a little different. I don't think this is as accurate, however, it does look better, in my opinion. If you go red, white, and then back to red, because then it really highlights it. There's an orange box up here, whatever this is. I think I go a little overboard on the decals sometimes, because in Tiny Combat Arena, if we go back to here, they have some of these again, but it's like a red triangle and like an arrow and a nav light. So odds are you could cut down on the complexness of these shapes if you really wanted to, but I think they look cool, so I'm not doing that. Next thing are a bunch of grills, probably. Because it looks like there's a bunch of these on the plane. So like under here, biggest one's probably up there, but there's also a couple. We can put a black box right there. Again, it's little things that add just a little more detail. And helps break up the uniform, especially for like these aircraft, which are all, or this aircraft, where it's all just one color. It helps to have stuff that breaks up the shape of it, if you know what I'm saying. I think that's about it. No, it's not. I totally forgot the big glaring issue. Hold on, actually. I'm just gonna stick some 2 long strips up here. Again, detail just, in my opinion, adds a bit. Now we can try to tackle this big hole up here. Firstly, actually, we can get the modifiers set up. So mirror this object with a shrink wrap. shrink wrap to here. I believe all of them are on the fuselage right now anyway. 0.01. I think that worked for most of them anyway. There we go, there we go. Look at that. Okay, so this one's going to be a little more tricky. I got actually pretty lucky here. Most of my decals fell on a flat face. Like if you look here, they didn't really have any severe joints they had to cross. That's probably one of the most tricky parts to get looking right, is whenever you have large joints that need to be like filled in. Like here, this is a pretty big joint across the top of the plane. However, this one actually probably won't be too bad because it's just that one line. What I'm gonna do is I'm thinking I can do something like this. That's pretty good, if I do say so myself. Most of the decals there are done then. All that's really needed now are the emblems. This leads into another thing. It's up to you if you want to, again, how detailed you want to go into this. 180. Just making sure that's right. Yeah, we're gonna have problems with the emblems. Or I'm talking about the whole having a big decal over a seam line. Alright, so this decal is going to be kind of a pain, because as you can see it lies over a pretty major seam line. Again, we could just try moving it up a little. But for the purposes of this, and to be honest, I probably, if I was actually doing this, I would probably move it up and just put it there. However, for the purposes of this tutorial, I'll show you how to do this in case it's unavoidable, which it very much is in certain cases. So we have our decal on our thing that we wanna put. So what I usually like to do is I like to cut and then essentially just cut along the lines that are there. So again, we also have these ones up here, so we can go here to this point and then back down to here. And this just adds a little bit of extra geometry and helps the shape conform a little more. I'm just going to add 0.05 so it sticks out. But see, that does not look great. So to help fix that just a little, you can try moving it closer. And then if you really need to, you can scale it up a little. And I think that looks pretty good for what we're trying to do. The wing's a big flat surface, this shouldn't be too hard. This decal shouldn't be too hard to fix. And again, as you guys can see, when I have the face that's like on top of that, I'll just separate it and then add its offset by just a fraction of an amount. 0.001, we can select this, separate it, and then set this to 0.5. And we're already starting to get something that looks like what we want it to. So I guess we might as well move on to the big lettering, since I do that for the F102, as you can see back here. I have the lettering on the sides, so I ought to do it for the F106 as well. For this, in Tiny Combat Arena, all the text, like let me go to the F4, it should have, yeah, TC and these numbers on the tail. These are all meshes. These are, I believe, probably done by hand by Y485 himself. But, what I do is I cheat a little. So I type it out, U.S Air Force, and then we go to the font, and I myself have installed a U.S. Air Force, the Amarillo font, on my own time, which obviously makes things a little easier. That's actually pretty close, which is weird. The spacing on that looks weird. Spacing on that looks actually pretty normal. Never mind. We're going to keep it like this. We got it right there. We can put it close. Move it up a little bit. Actually, I'm going to angle it just a tad. Now the lettering is a little tricky because this isn't like... none of this is really real. Like it's a real mesh, but it's a very ugly mesh, and you'll see that in a minute whenever I do it. So actually, because again this is over a bunch of seam lines, it's going to be a little tricky to get right. So I'm going to convert it to mesh first, and as you can see, look at how horrible that is. Tries to quads. That cleans it up a little bit, but see, dang it, Blender, why can't you just play nice? Like this should be like this, and all of these can go away. I'm probably not going to do a whole lot of work on trying to fix these, because again, it's not like it matters. But I'm at least going to try. No, I'm not. That's going to take too long. You really could try to make the topology look nice and neat like this one if you really wanted to, and it's probably worth it to keep the artifacts from popping in. However, most of the time you're not going to really need to worry about it. Now, obviously it's a curved surface, so maybe doing something like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to cut along these seam lines like we did for the other decals. We're going to hope that this fixes our problems. So we have just those two, really. So why isn't this working? There we go. Look at that. Look at that. That's so pretty. Now we can just do it all over again. That actually might work. If we're lucky. Yeah, if we're lucky, this might actually end up working alright. It's because the line is different over here. How many triangles did that add? Oh, we're at 1.2. These alone are like 400 of those. So if we were to hide these, we'd be back at 800. Oh well. The price you pay for rule of cool, as they say. And this is going to add even more triangles and tiny... This is not... Blender's not going to be too happy with me, but... I don't care too much at this point. Now, for some weird reason, this P is getting mad, and I have got no idea why. This... See, it's so nice on this side. Like... That's better. Still don't know what's wrong with this thing, though. Oh, perfect. Again, we're sort of, as they say, past the point of no return. Here, with the triangle count, it's not going to get any better from here. It's actually really going to get worse. You look on the real 106, they're that close, and I'm not going to bother redoing it, so that's how close they are in the diagram. Ah, but look at that, 1,300. That one knife cut added like 100 triangles. That's the one benefit of having nice topology, is that, like, Anyway. We can move on to the wings now. I'm gonna do the USAF text, and then some simple tail art. And that should be all of the actual modeling done, for now, anyway. And I'll show you what I mean by for now. Because essentially after this, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up parenting this to a to an already existing aircraft. Like the MiG-21 or something. This will essentially just help us import easier into Tiny Combat Arena, since it'll already have all the stuff that we need built in. 0.001 convert mesh. But see, that's not what I want to do right now, because this is backwards. No. Oh, come on. USAF 0.001. Look at that. All our emblems are there, all our decals are on. Now I'm going to do a very simple tail thing. Again, we're sort of past the point of no return in terms of poly count. We're already at like, oh geez, 1400. That's kind of a shame. There's nothing we can do. Make it yellow, why not? That looks pretty cool. What we really even can do is we can do this. Ooh. Fancy. And add some red. Look at that. And that's gonna be it, I think. I'm not gonna bother with the numbers on the tail. Well, shoot. Am I? Yeah, I am. I'm gonna bother. $68240. And that's 5 digits, alright. Now we just need to go to font, Amarillo. Shrink wraps to this 0.01, and that works, and we can move it over to the other side and rotate it 180. Move it over until it's back to where we want it to be. Apply, look at it, it looks good. Convert mesh, join. We can set these both to the material and select all of the faces and scale to 0 and then move that to black. Alright. I think that's it. I think we have finally finished it. For the most part. I'll explain what that means in a minute. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. F106. Then I'm going to start applying everything, and then I'm going to save this as a different file. Forgot to select the stars, hold on. Okay, there we go. Look at that. It's all one object now. Now we can start to do the fun part, which is getting it actually ready for the game. So, I actually kind of forgot, but this totally requires something different. To be able to do this, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to download this app called Asset Studio and install or extract the aircraft. So essentially, yeah, I have this set up for nuclear option right now, but if you load the entire Tiny Combat Arena data folder, if this doesn't go away soon, I'm just gonna basically, point is, if this will actually go through, it should eventually. Okay, never mind. I'm restarting. Basically, it allows you to export models from the game. And so with Tiny Combat Arena, if we go to Managed, yeah, probably Managed actually, select that folder. Maybe I'm wrong. Load file. Yeah, no, I was wrong. We actually want to go to here and go to the asset files here. Look at resources.asset. Yep, and look at that. This has all of our objects that the game regularly uses. And so once again, it has all the palettes, it has all the textures, it has all the models of things like vehicles and it has a lot of stuff. And basically what you can do is if you want like to use the MiG-21 or MiG-23, let's go with MiG-23 because it's right here as a base. You select it, you can go to Model, and then Export Selected Objects. So I've already done that for all of the planes in the game. I would recommend doing that too. You can just have a little folder where you use them as reference or as a like a template like I'm going to do here. But basically once you have that done, you can import FBX, go to wherever you did that. I have them here in this game object folder. You can select MiG-21 because it's pretty close to what we're doing. And then be aware that it scales it all to like something super tiny. So you're going to want to resize all of that. Wow, I didn't realize how big the 106 is. It's a big plane. But yeah, now we can actually start on the process of getting it into the game. Let me discuss, I guess, a little bit about the hierarchy of all the stuff in the MiG. So all these big red boxes are the colliders, and they are what give the hitboxes its like shape. So you can automatically hide all of those for now. The next thing are the gibs, and these are essentially whenever the aircraft gets destroyed, all of these are spawned in, and it basically makes the airplane look like it exploded. And these are literally duplicates of the default mesh, just broken up into different pieces. Then you have like the fuselage, the tail with all its damage model components, the wing with all its damage model components. And so cockpit, that kind of thing. Be aware that all these these things are called arrays in Blender, and they essentially decide where stuff will go in Unity. So like here are the gun barrels, and you can define them in the JSON. And then it will actually use said gun barrels. Same with the radar, cockpit, camera, pilot. I think you get the gist. So now, what I'll usually do for this is I will start off with a tail. So as you can see here, the tail outer, is essentially a chopped off chunk of the tail that is used for the damage model. So then what you can do is you can grab your knife tool, press C for cut through, then make some jagged looking cut through here. Select all your parts. P by selection, and then you can join it to there. One thing you got to be wary of, like because I've already done all the painting on this guy, is for some odd reason, whenever you join two models together and they have different UV map names, it doesn't like it, and it basically kills one of the UV maps, which is why this goes to like an ugly yellow. So what you can do is you can just go to here, delete this one, join it, and then delete all that. Perfect. Tail is done, or the outer tail is done. Now we can do the inner tail by just selecting what's left of the tail, separating it, joining it to this. Be sure to delete the UV map, join, delete, just making sure I actually deleted that, and then hide it. Just keep in mind, we don't have elevators, so we're not going to deal with these right now. Just hide them. Now we can go to the wings. You can see these wings are in two chunks, the right inner and the right outer. So essentially, just grab your knife tool, make some cuts. I tend to try to avoid decals since again it makes things a little easier for me. And also reduces your poly count. But again, the poly count isn't really important anymore. We're already a little over it, but still nice to think about. Again, just select your next thing, separate it, select your next thing, be sure to destroy the UV map, join, replace. And you can just keep going through all these parts until you have your model totally done. Now we have the fuselage. Thankfully, the fuselage is actually pretty simple. I don't know why the pitot tube is separated for the MiG-21, but if you really want, I'm not going to do this. You could separate your pitot tube and stick it here. I'm not, though. I'm just going to delete it. I don't know what's the point of it, but basically, with the cockpit, with the fuselage, actually, something you want to look out for is the cockpit. Just make sure you have these canopy pieces separated, like with the MiG-21. And so this is the canopy that'll actually get ejected. Like when you eject, that's the canopy that will pop off. So what I'll do is I'll select right there that canopy frame. We can separate that, and so whenever we eject, this will go flying off. I can join that to there. Forgot to destroy the UV map. Delete that, hide it, go to here, select the front canopy, go to here, UV map, hold on, join, delete. And now for the big one. Oh shoot, that's not good. Forgot to select one of the ribs of the canopy. There we go. Now we can join this to the rest of this. However, before we do this, one thing that I like to do for the MiG cockpit, or fuselage in general, is I'll go merge by distance, and I'll go tries to quads just to clean it up a little. And again, this makes the shading look all weird, so you can go shade flat, normals, auto smooth off. Basically, I like doing all this so I can get the cockpit separated out from the original aircraft. So I'll take all this, I'll separate it, and then what we can do is we can, hold on, just get that, put that there, be sure to delete the original UV map, join it together, and hold on, select everything here, then join, and so we can just delete it. Look at that. Now everything is linked up. This is basically done right now. You could go through Unity, you could go through the process and export this right now, and it would work. However, I'm not done yet because there's still a lot of things that I want to do that are good things to do, in my opinion, and I would recommend for you guys to do as well. So let's start off with making a simple cockpit. Nothing too complicated. I'm just going to use these original parts from the MiG-21 and rearrange them. The reason I do this is because it just helps me get a sense of scale compared to the pilot and make sure that like everything makes a little bit of sense, and that does. So I'm happy with that for now. We can really quickly make a little bay for the pilot. So just fill in that face, fill in that face, and fill in that face. And what we can do is we can take these two faces, scale them down, or extrude them down, scale 0, and then we have a little area for our dude to hang out in. Really, I'm just going to join that to that now. Get rid of this material there. So that's fine for now. Oh, hold on. Yeah, that's one thing I forgot. Nozzle. So, really quickly actually, I'm going to move the nozzle over to where this nozzle is. Right about there. Along with the engine effects. Take that too, because this is where the afterburner and such spawn. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to remove the inner ring and that flat face there. Separation. And join it. You join it, and then we delete that. And now I would get rid of all materials other than the nozzle the nozzle material itself. And one other thing that you ought to do is you ought to go to the side view, go project from view, go back into UV editing, and then scale this up so it actually fits with the afterburner decal, as you can see here. And look at that, that works. So I'm happy. We can again just do some minor changes with the arrays over here. Like for example, moving these to where the landing gear would be. So we got, if we look over here at an actual F-106. Hold on, I got a diagram for this. Scratch that. That's good enough. I start with the wheels because the wheels are always very important. If you don't start off with the wheels, you'll have problems with... So, what am I talking about? Basically, whenever you have the wheels here, the wheels must be in line with the main gear part, which is this array right here. And so if you start trying to move stuff all over the place, it's gonna break that, and you're gonna have some problems. So I always start with getting the wheels in position first, and then I worry about the rest of the landing gear. And again, right now, and heck, in all of my airplanes, I just reused the original landing gear. Like if you look here at the F-86, for instance, this is just a modified F5 landing gear thing. That's all this is. This one is a modified MiG-21 landing gear, I believe. I believe this was modified MiG-21 landing gear. This one is just straight up copied from the F-86. I haven't bothered changing it yet. And this one was, again, another one copied from the MiG-21. So my point is, in my opinion, I would start off with an existing landing gear instead of trying to fabricate your own, just because it's a lot easier and you can still get convincing results. So the landing gear are about in the right position. That's fine for now. The other thing we can do is these pylons. We know that the F-106 did not have a whole lot of pylons. However, I think it did have a couple. So it had two big ones for the wing tanks, but the rest were in the bay. Alright. So right now I can just delete all but two of these. Probably these outer two right here. Since, you know, we're just not going to use them. The gun barrels, they can stay where they are for now. Next thing is going to be the trails. So the trails, which are here at the very edge of the MiG-21 wingtips, we're going to take them. What I usually do is I'll grab both of them, I'll scale them on the x-axis to help get them in the right position. But obviously this actually changes the scale of them along with moving them away from each other, so you can just go to scale and hit Control A, apply the scale, set this back to 1, and then copy to selected. And there we go. Look at that. So I'm actually going to grab these elevators and colliders and move them back really quick to where an elevator would be, because I still haven't decided what I'm going to do with these. I may straight up delete them. They don't have any physical properties on the actual aircraft. I'm just going to have to remember to get rid of them when it comes to JSON time. Yeah, let's do it. We're deleting them. Elevators are gone, so now all we have to do with is some of these colliders for the tails and fuselage. So essentially, colliders in this game are pretty generous. So usually, like for example here, with this jutting out bit, I'm not going to cover that with a collider, because again, you don't really need to. However, I'm going to make the collider a little bigger, just so it takes up that area just a little bit. That's pretty good. Next for the wings, again I like to do both of the wings at the same time. For obvious reasons, it just makes stuff a little easier. I don't have to then go mirror modify or something and hope it doesn't break. And there we go. That is a little thick. So what I might do is I might make the wingtips a little thinner. There we go, that's not too bad. Now all that we have left is the fuselage. And again, the colliders don't have to be exact. I always reuse the existing ones just because, again, it's easier and you can get away with it. If you really want to, you can make your own custom colliders. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but you are very much welcome to do that. Again, usually I can get mostly where I want to be just by taking the existing one and scaling it down. And once again, mind you, this doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be somewhat representative of the aircraft shape. Look at that. Last thing I'm going to do before I think we are mostly done, actually. We still got a little bit more to do, mostly on the landing gear. The landing gear is probably one of the most time-consuming parts. Come on. When it comes to trying to figure stuff out, just because, especially in Unity and the JSON files, you can have some weird stuff happen. Oh yes, and the shadow. I always forget about the shadow. The shadow is very easy to do though. So basically, I'll just usually select the existing shadow once again. Very original. But I'll take the different points, like here are the points on the wing, and move them to the points on the wing. Take these first 2 points, move them to the edge of the wing, where the wing actually is. Gonna delete these points for the elevators because we don't have them. Get these points for the wings here. So again, we can drag out this front, and these two can go because we don't have that shot cone intake going on. This is actually a little easier, never mind. That's pretty good for a shadow. You don't need a lot more than that. I'm thinking that's about it. All that's left is the canopy and the landing gear, so I'll hold off on the landing gear for now. Never mind. Let's get the gibs out of the way. I always forget about the gibs, mostly because you can't see them in game unless you actually explode. But basically, as I said earlier, there are a bunch of parts of the fuselage that have been broken up. So whenever you die, it looks like you actually exploded. And so what we can do is we can just duplicate the fuselage, move this thing up. I'm gonna just select all these. Dang it, come on, come on. Select invert hide. How high do we move this up? 2 meters, alright. And so now what we can do is just cut it into a bunch of pieces. So do that. We can do one here. This is the problem with having a bunch of these big decals. It becomes sort of a pain to do stuff like this, but it is what it is. And then lastly, the nose, which we can, what the heck, we can cut the cockpit right in half. Just making sure that went all the way through on all sides. Now we can move these back down by -2, and then rejoin, oh dang it, come on. Rejoin this to here. Remember, delete the UV. Would you look at that? We have all our gibs done. We can now move on to the cockpit. So now if we look at the cockpit for the F-102 or F-106, I believe it actually does kind of look like the F-102 cockpit, if I'm not mistaken, if I can find a, oh whatever. Alright, yeah, so first things first, we need to get the canopy frame in there. And that can be done by just going into here, select the windows, select invert, duplicate, and then do that double faces thing, but put it on the inside. Still can't see them, hold on. There we go, now you can see them. Now you have a canopy frame. On that one anyway. Now we can do the same on this guy. Now you've got a canopy frame. Perfect. Now what we can do is move on to this instrument panel. This one's not going to be too advanced. You can make this instrument panel really fancy if you want. I was pretty happy with mine for the F100, which I might, oh what the heck, I'll show it off now. Here's the F100, so you got like a bunch of flat cubes for where instruments would go. You have the heads-up display, rudder pedals, everything there. I think it's pretty neat. I'm not going to go that in depth on this one, but most of the techniques are pretty similar. So instrument panel ends around here, I would say. And it's actually, I think it's pretty flat. Not angled like that. And I'm going to probably, there's no heads-up display here, it's just a radar dome. or a radar display, so I'm just gonna kill that while we're at it. Next thing you can do is, again, you see this skirt at the top. What we can do is we can take this top edge, extrude it, extrude it a little like that. Fix the normals, duplicate it, and then do the interior normals. And look at that. Now for the end back here. Oh well, never mind. We can work on this radar dome though. This, not radar dome, what am I talking about? Radar scope. If we get a thing with, let's go with 5. Again, you kind of want it to be a little simplified. How far out is this? Eh, not that far. I think it's a little smaller than that compared to the entire instrument panel. Something like that. Believe this just goes down into the instrument panel, something like that. And again, there's a skirt here once again, so we can just do this. Those ones are actually already done, so we can just shift duplicate, shift N. Look at that. A couple other little tips and tricks that I like doing for cockpits is using simple planes, because you can get some pretty convincing results with just a plane. Added a mirror modifier to this thing. So you see how we have these little armrest kind of things on the side where all these instruments are here and here. What we can do is we can make those very easily with just a plane. Move that down a little because it is angled down a little bit in the picture. Something like that. It's like these edges scale down, and we don't even need the back faces because nobody's going to be seeing them. Then if we look back at the original photo, they sort of go straight vertical behind the instrument panel. So what we can do is we can sort of extend this out here until here, where we can move this straight vertical or almost vertical before extruding this entire thing that way. And look at that. That's pretty cool. Duplicate this face, inset it a little, not inset it, but extrude it over there to create this center panel that goes right below the stick. It kind of looks like that. Again, none of this needs to be perfect, and I honestly might call it good at that. Now we can actually color this because it's looking really ugly right now, but the interior of the 106 is like a light gray looking thing. So we can actually just select all of this stuff. Including the interior cockpit. Actually hide that right now. Unhide, hide. Select all of this. Unhide. Scale this to 0. Move this to that dark gray. Look at that. I believe that radar dome's going to be mostly black too. Yep. A radar scope. Color the interior this green because it looks kind of cool. Hold on, that's supposed to be black too. Just gonna inset these a little and make them black, because once again, the base itself is black, but with all those, it's the dark gray, but with all those switch panels on top, it makes it black, and so that sort of gives it that kind of effect. I could do the same with the instrument panel, but I don't know if it would look as good. That looks alright. I'll keep it. And I'd say that's pretty good for the cockpit. For now, anyway. Oh yes, this is also important. Be sure... So once again, we have the interior frame selected right now, correct? I believe I'm correct. So now what we need to do is we need to set this to a... Oh, come on. We need to set this to the cockpit dark gray, just so that when you look at it from... dang it. Did I have that wrong? Backface culling on, set to texture. Nope, I was right. That's just the gib, so we can get rid of that. That's what it would look like. I think that's pretty cool. Okay, we're on the home stretch here. All that's left is the landing gear. Unfortunately, the landing gear is one of the more tricky things to get right. However, that's more with implementation into the actual game than the actual modeling part. So let's get right on that. So as you can see, two wheels for the nose. So I'm just changing that real quick. And it doesn't mount to the gear like this at all, actually. One thing I like to do with these landing gear legs is clean them up a little. So triced quads, shade flat, and merge by distance. I want to keep that. This just makes manipulation a little easier. However, if I get a look at the landing gear here. Okay, we're just going to Google landing gear. It actually mostly looks like a straight peg here. So that's the wing. Wing is pretty self-explanatory, but the nose... There we go, that's a good photo of the nose. So it has like a linkage gear there, and then just a really big main strut there. So what I can do is I can select that, that, and that. Nope. You can go away. I want this right now. What we can do is we can just sort of move that to where it's going to hook up with the thing. We can get our little wheel connector here and try to make this like a scissor linkage thing. Back here, like for suspension. And then we can have that one linkage in the front. Duplicate this, scale it down a little. Once again, it doesn't really need to be perfect, it just needs to look cool. And that looks pretty cool. Changing this back to my material, because again, it'll screw up the colors. That's pretty good. Now with the wheel landing gear, get rid of all this stuff. Now, this one's going to be a little trickier because as you can see, the landing gears right now mounted to the inside when we really need these to move inside or outside. Anyway, you'll see what I'm trying to say here in a minute. This is a little tricky because you can't What I'm going to end up doing is just rotating these individually and then scaling them by themselves. Dang it, I actually didn't really want to do that. Hold on. So with both selected, we can really quickly try to clean these up. Merge. Well, you don't necessarily want to merge by distance here because, especially with these landing gear doors, which are double-faced, it's going to turn these double faces into single faces, which is obviously a problem. So I'm going to really quickly separate these from the original mesh right here. And then I can select these two and these two. Control M by distance, shade flat, auto smooth, and then I believe it's shift click maybe, or copy to selected. Hold on. Nope. Copy to selected. There we go. Now what we can do is we can rotate these each by 180. Nope. Nope. Not at all what I'm trying to do. Select both. Select this one, rotate by 180. This one, rotate by 180. Move it over. Move this one over. Move these up so they actually join with the wing. Because once again, the wing landing gear just sort of goes straight up. Hold on, is that right? Is that right? Ah, shoot, no, it has 3 linkages actually. You see them here, but they're just in line with the main one. So you have that one going off to the side, and then you have 2 going off here. You might even... Nope, you can't see that in the picture. You can't see it in the front view, though. So we can do scale, rotate. You might need this thing to be pretty long, actually. Hold on. And actually, because this is so long, if we were to rotate this thing in Unity, it would actually just poke through the wing. So we're going to have to make this a separate object, and I'll show how to rig that up when we get to the animating the landing gear portion. This, in my opinion, is the problem with trying to do this stuff, is that you don't want to... you want to have it mirrored, but you don't want to... You don't want to screw up the parenting that's already put in place. There we go. Clear the parent. Nope. Clear parent, keep transform. And this guy's parented to, I believe, just the mains. Well, actually, we want him to be parented to the, this guy. Keep transform. Keep transform. Control P, keep transform. So when this guy moves, so basically what we'll end up doing is whenever this guy rotates, we can rotate this guy as well. And actually... let's do that right now. I'll get the origin set up for it. It'll make it a lot easier whenever I explain it in a moment. Alright, I'm not going to bother doing the side braces since, again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Or I will make these a little thicker. And I will go with the landing gear doors here, and we got to modify these a good bit. What do the doors for the 106 look like? They just sort of look like triangles, I guess. That's easy. We can do that. You can sort of see the outline on the diagram down here, but individual origin scaled to 0. basically. Just gonna angle the landing gear. The landing gear doors, actually, for that matter. Hold on. Ah, shoot. See, that doesn't look right. I don't think they're that far away. I think it's a little more conservative than that. I'll use the inside of this line then. Something like that. There we go. I'm gonna call that good for the landing gear. And that might be it for the rest of the modeling, at least for now. All of it's been done. Almost all of it, actually. I've got a handful of things left to do. Mostly just recoloring these landing gear. So wheels, black. These get that white color. The doors, are these the interior or the exterior? I cannot tell. Those are the exterior, so exterior get the same gray, I believe. Hold on, actually, that should get that kind of gray. These should get this kind of green. There we go. The struts should be this dark gray, and this should be a light. Yeah, just a lighter gray. This should be dark gray. Would you look at that? Let's hide these diagrams. Let's hide all the gibs. They cause a lot of clipping stuff. But look at that. That's pretty cool, my opinion. We got our cockpit in there. We got our landing gear all set up. So this is all for part 1. This was just the Blender side of things. The next part will be the Unity side, and then the third part's going to be the JSON side, where I'm going to go into actually like changing the flight performance and everything. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you stick around for the next couple of chunks, because I'm pretty excited to see how this all turns out. Thank you for watching.